Hey, this is Rahul from RWR.com and welcome to the Harley Davidson Street 750 review.
Until you find your way back home. Find your way back home.
I had visited the Harley Davidson showroom a couple of years back, and ever since I wanted to do a proper review of this. I could have done a 5-kilometer long test drive, but that really doesn't give you an honest impression of the bike. So I waited, and a few months back my subscriber and friend Rohan Chaudhary, he bought this bike, and ever since I've been waiting to ride it. I know this review is kind of late, but it was nice to finally get an opportunity to test one of the big cruisers for me. For Harley, it might be the entry-level option. It is a lot different than Harley usually does things because it has got the radiator, which means liquid cooling instead of the traditional air-cooled engines. The exhaust sound is also a lot different. I remember I did a video which got over 1 lakh views because this exhaust sound is so unique. People wanted to know. A lot of people hate it. If you just replace it with a Screaming Eagle, you can get a lot more aggressive sound, which is quite okay with my standards because I don't really believe in air-cooled engines in our climate. Even with the liquid cooling, my subscriber, he's complaining that city rides, it's heating up. So imagine how hard air cooling can get. Some people call this a mini version of the Night Rod in approach, at least. I have to say that there are certain amount of resemblances in the sound and the way the engine handles. If you're talking about the power, it's just 47 bhp, right? So for a bike which is over 200 kg, it might not sound like to be a too powerful bike, but it comes with a 60 Newton meters of torque, which is mammoth considering it's being delivered just as 4000 RPM. So right from the word go, when you're accelerating, the bike feels a lot more powerful, but that's just because of the torque. And even when you're doing top gear roll-ons, like even if you are in 4th or 5th gear at 40 kilometers per hour speed and you're accelerating, you get pretty good results with the bike. And it's very nice to ride on the highway because I've been riding it on the highway. It's a straight nice patch all along for 40 kilometers or so, and this is the type of roads where you'd want to enjoy this bike. Ergonomics wise, it's pretty comfortable. It kind of reminds me of the other smaller cruiser I rode. It's like a standard bike. It's not those high handlebar cruisers. If you're riding any other normal motorcycle, you get onto this, you'd feel at home right from the word go. I couldn't really complain. The seats are wide, they're plush, the pillion gets enough comfort for it. Also, when you're talking about handling, cruisers, you know, they're supposed to handle a little badly, but this one, it does surprisingly well for its weight. It is not a very flickable thing, but it definitely goes into the corner. It gives you the sort of confidence. The front suspension travel is a little bit more than what I would like, but that really is soaking up all the bumps. We've had some problems with the road because of the recent monsoon, but while I was riding on this, I couldn't feel it. On my Duke, I do feel it, so maybe it's good for our conditions. But while I was doing the lane changes, I could feel that the front was not giving as much feedback as I wanted. I'm not sure whether that is the issue because I'm new to the bike, but I think it's because of the front suspension has a little bit more travel. Rear suspension, I found the rear was really grippy and it was giving a lot of confidence to me because the bike is really stable even when you're doing speeds of around 160, 170, and the bike, you know, it is limited on the speedometer to 180. I think it goes beyond 180. Right, so I went up to 170 and there was still a lot of go left into the bike, which means by no means this is a slow bike. Don't take it as a slow bike just because it's a cruiser. If you ignore it, it will definitely overtake you in the highways. Fit and finish wise, it's not right up there with the other Harleys. I've seen the other Harleys, they're like craftsman's job. They're like a work of art. This is more like your production motorcycle. It's still better than what we ride in our 2 to 3 lakh budget. But yeah, I can understand somebody who's used to the Harley fit and finish quality probably thinking it's got cheap switchgear and stuff. Personally, from the level of motorcycles I ride, I don't mind this. There is one problem, right? And that is after you cross 120 kilometers, vibrations creep in. It's not like the vibrations which we faced on Royal Enfield bikes. It's definitely much more controlled than that, but it's definitely there. And the mirrors, I have a problem with the mirrors. The mirrors, due to the vibrations, the mirrors are vibrating so much that I cannot see what's behind me. I see kind of like a blurred image on the mirrors. I really did not like that part. The vibrations, well, because I'm sitting upright, it's not really filtering into my wrists. It is there after 120 kilometers per hour speed. And one bad thing, really bad thing is it is a naked bike. I mean, it's a cruiser. When I'm sitting on it, it's got terrible wind buffeting. I got so much wind blast. I don't even get that on my Duke, and it's got a very minimum wind protection, small windscreen. And I've ridden other naked bikes. I've even ridden naked bikes up to 200 kilometers per hour speed. But on this bike, that wind buffeting is just terrible. I think it's because of the design. With a top high windscreen, it can be fixed a little bit. But since we don't have that, I got really the blast of my life, and my helmet was moving. I've never faced that before on any bike. Means even not even on the Hayabusa, which was going much faster than this. So that's one point. Braking, it's another place where I would want to see some improvements. Of course, this is a cruiser, so you cannot do front brake only, which is usually my preferred braking method. But even if you're doing 70-30 braking, the front feels like it could have had a little bit more bite and a lot more braking power. Where is the braking power? You know, I was talking to my subscriber why he's an 18-year-old guy. I told him, why did you buy a Harley? And he said he wanted a sport bike, but his father thought that sport bikes are kind of dangerous. So he bought him this cruiser instead. Yes, of course it is slower. Then probably you expect another Z800 or something like the CBR 650F. But consider this, the braking power on this is much lesser, and you do get to speeds of around 160, 170, which you get on those bikes as well. The top speed may be 20 to 30 kilometers less, but even at 130 to 140, if your braking power is not there, specifically for a heavier bike which is over 220 kgs, it's gonna be difficult, right, to stop. And I did face it. I didn't have the confidence to brake late on this bike, and honestly I feel it needs dual front discs. That's about that. I'll say it honestly. The rear brake, yes, it is giving you that sort of extra stopping power which you need and which you expect from a cruiser. It is there, and it is not having that locking up tendency. I tried braking hard, it didn't lock up, but it does lack the ABS. For a motorcycle that is going to do a lot of kilometers on the highway, I mean, for the US market, this may be a street bike. For our market, this is mostly going to be doing a ton of kilometers on highway. I know one of my friends who has done thousands of kilometers touring on this bike. He has no problems with it. But ABS, really, Harley, this is the modern design. Put it in if you're listening. Up till now, whatever I've told you is based on my experience of riding this motorcycle where it belongs, the highway. But how can I talk about this motorcycle and conclude the review of the Street 750 without riding it on the busy streets of Kolkata? In my next part, I have to ride it in the streets, and after that I can conclude the review of the Harley Davidson Street 750. So let's go. The conditions quickly changed from bright sunny to rain, and we had to pause our ride for a while, and when we resumed it was just drizzling. Unfortunately, the tires weren't really behaving the way I expected them to. This has been a problem with the MRFs. Under wet conditions they lose a lot of traction, and when I was putting down the power, the rear wheel was losing some of its stability. Now I know this is not a problem with the chassis and the suspension, because in the drive when we were doing the same thing there was no problem with the motorcycle, but the moment we started doing that on the wet, The tires lost a lot of their grip. The motorcycle wasn't feeling as confident as I was feeling on the dry situation. Now I think Harley should really take a look and maybe find a better tire manufacturer for this bike, because it's really affecting the performance. We also encountered some really bad patches of the road, and as expected, the suspension was giving no problems, gobbling it all up. Again, the tires were not really performing up to the standards, and on gravel and stuff I really felt that the grip was reducing a lot more. We did ride it in city as well, and riding it in traffic I found it to be surprisingly easy for a 200 kg motorcycle, specifically because of the lower handlebars, which are really easy to turn in the traffic. I mean, don't try to lean the bike too much in traffic because the weight's going to be on you in that case. But if you're just gonna ride it like a normal bike, not take too many chances with it, it's pretty easy to ride in traffic. Yes, after you ride a while in the traffic, you kind of get that heating, and on my Duke 390 I faced it. It was pretty bad. On this bike it's even worse. I really did not expect so much heating, but I guess it's a 750cc twin cylinder. It has got liquid cooling, but in our conditions it's really difficult. It's not really the best bike to ride in Indian city conditions. Looking back at the ride, I really spent a lot of time on the motorcycle. I liked the part when I was riding it on the highway. Yes, there are problems with the brakes and the tires, and especially the inclusion of ABS is really going to change the motorcycle's dynamics and behavior. There's one point that this bike doesn't have a fuel gauge. A fuel gauge would be very nice addition in the next version, I presume, but there is a warning light here, so if you hit the reserve, then that light comes on and you know how much fuel you've got left. So that's a nice touch, but a fuel gauge wouldn't hurt on the next version, as I've said before. So we're finally concluding this motorcycle. I hope you got a very good idea of how it is to ride the bike, or whether it's a possible buying for you or not. The seating height is very low, so one of my friends was actually considering it for his wife. I was initially apprehensive, but after riding, I think yes, women riders can also manage it. So I hope he gets his wife this bike. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon. This is Rahul. Goodbye.